Chapter 11, Measuring the Cost of Living. These are the questions we seek answers to. What is the Consumer Price Index, or CPI? How is it calculated? What is it used for? What are the problems with the CPI? How serious are they? How does the CPI differ from the Gdp Deflator? How can we use the CPI to compare dollar amounts from different years? Why would we want to do this anyway? How can we correct interest rates for inflation? So, Consumer Price Index, CPI, it measures the overall cost of goods and services bought by a typical consumer. It monitors changes in the cost of living over time. How do we define core CPI? Core CPI is a measure of the overall cost of consumer goods and services, excluding food and energy. What about PPI, or Producer Price Index? It's a measure of the cost of a basket of goods and services bought by farms. How is CPI calculated? First, fix the basket. This is done by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS. They survey consumers to determine what is in the typical consumer's shopping basket. Then we go around, find the prices. Step number 2. The BLS collects data on the prices of all the goods in the basket. Number 3, compute the basket's cost. Use the prices to compute the total cost of the basket. Step 4, choose a base year and compute the CPI. Designate a year as a base year, some kind of benchmark. So CPI is the basket's cost in current year divided by basket's cost in base year times 100. That is the formula for calculating CPI. Step 5, compute the inflation rate. Percentage change in the CPI from the preceding year, or more formally, inflation rate is equal to CPI this year minus CPI last year over CPI last year times 100. That is the percentage change in CPI from year to year. You just calculated inflation rate. Example 1, market basket is, step 1 is to fix the basket. And in our example, our basket is 10 pizzas and 5 shirts. And here, as you can see, in year 2017, pizza cost $12, shirts cost $18. And in 2018, pizza cost $14 and shirts cost $20. And in 2019, pizza cost $16 and shirts cost $22. So step 2 is to calculate the cost in the basket. So this would be 12 times 10 pizzas, and 18 times 5 shirts. So the cost in that basket is 210 in 2017. 2018, the same, and we come up with 240. 2019, we come up with 270. So compute CPI in each year. 2017, we have chosen as the base year. So 2017 is 210 divided by 210 times 100. Cost in the specific year divided by cost in the base year times 100. In this case, the specific year and the base year are the same, and therefore the CPI in the base year will always be 100. In 2018, it is 240, which is cost in 2018, divided by 210, which is cost in the base year, times 100, and that gives you 114. And in 2019, the cost in 2019, cost of the basket was 270, divided by cost in the base year, which is 210, multiplied by 100. The CPI is 128.6. Now we calculate the inflation rate. We use the CPI to calculate inflation rate. So inflation rate between 17 and 18 is 114.3 minus 100 divided by 100, then you multiply by 100. The inflation rate is 14.3. What about between 2018 and 2019? 128.6 minus 114.3 divided by 114.3 times 100. Inflation rate for 2019 would be 12.5%. What is in the basket? When we say a market basket consumed by a typical consumer, this is what is in the basket, different weights. It looked like the largest item in this basket is, I suppose, housing. Housing takes 42.2% of our income, followed by, looks like transportation, 16.7% is transportation. Then food, 14.2%. Then medical care, 8.7%. Then education, 6.5%. Then recreation, 5.6%. And then apparel, 2.9%. Then others, 3.2%. Now you know what is in the basket that is consumed by a typical urban middle class. Active learning calculates CPI and inflation rate. If the basket is 10 pounds of beef and 20 pounds of chicken, you're given the base year is 217, you're asked to calculate CPI and inflation rate. So 2017, you got price of beef is $3 and price of chicken is $3. 2018, price of beef is $4, price of chicken is $4. 2019, price of beef is $8, price of chicken is $5. So calculate CPI for all years. So what do? We start by finding the cost of the baskets. In 17, it is 3 times 10 plus 3 times 20, and that is 90 in 2017. The cost of the basket is in 2018 is 4 times 10, and 4 times 10, you add the 2, is 120. Then 2019, it is 8 times 10 plus 5 times 20, you have 180. Okay, then you use the CPI to calculate inflation. So for 2018, you take 133 minus, here is 2019 is 200 minus 133.3 divided by 133.3 times 100. Inflation is 50%. Active learning 2, a new basket, CPI and inflation rate. A new basket for 2019 has got 5 pounds of beef, 25 pounds of chicken, and the base year is 2017. Calculate the cost of the new basket for 2019 and CPI for 2019. And number B, what is the new inflation rate from 2018 to 2019? So cost of the basket, multiply 3, and the cost is 90. We have calculated that. In 2018, the cost is 120, and in 2019, the cost is 165. That's the cost of the basket. We use that to calculate the CPI. Number A, consumer price index. Number B, inflation rate. So here, the inflation rate between 18 and 19 is 183.3 minus 133.3 divided by 133.3 times 100 is 37.5. Problems with the CPI. There is substitution bias. Over time, some prices rise faster than others. Consumers substitute towards goods that become relatively cheaper, mitigating the effect of price increase. The CPI misses this substitution because it uses a fixed basket of goods. And thus, the CPI overstates increases in the cost of living. Is a weakness in the system. Consumers will substitute towards cheaper goods, but what is in the basket, it does not change. So the CPI fails to capture the actual change in prices. Another problem is the introduction of new goods. The introduction of new goods increases the variety, allows consumers to find products that more closely meet their needs. In effect, dollars become more valuable. The CPI misses this effect because it uses a fixed basket of goods. And therefore, the CPI overstates increases in the cost of living. The other problem is unmeasured quality change. Improvements in the quality of goods in the basket increase the value of each dollar. The Bureau of Labor Statistics tries to account for quality changes, but probably misses some, as quality is hard to measure. And thus, the CPI overstates increases in the cost of living. That is the graph that shows consumer price index as it moves along with the gross domestic product. The GDP deflator versus CPI. The imported consumer goods are included in CPI but excluded from GDP deflator. Capital goods are excluded from CPI but included in GDP deflator if produced domestically. The basket, the CPI, is a fixed basket, prices of all goods and services bought by consumers. The GDP deflator reflects prices of all goods and services currently produced domestically. Active learning 3, CPI versus GDP deflator. In each scenario, determine the effects on the CPI and the GDP deflator. A. Starbucks raises the price of muffins. That will affect CPI. Caterpillar, but does not affect the GDP deflator. Caterpillar raises the price of the industrial tractors it manufactures at Illinois. That will affect the GDP deflator because it is made in America, but not CPI because consumers don't buy Caterpillars. Number C, Armani raises the price of the Italian jeans it sells in the United States. That will affect the CPI. It will not affect the GDP deflator because these jeans are not made in USA. And these are the answers. Dollar figures from different times. Comparing dollar figures from different times. Inflation makes it harder to compare dollar amounts from different times. Here's the formula. Amount in today's dollars is equal to amount in year T dollars, that is some specific year in the past, times price level today as measured by CPI, divide by price level in year T, that is specific year. That's a very useful formula. Example 2. Great-grandpa's salary. Your great-grandpa's first full-time job was a car mechanic in 1963, and he was earning $310 per month. CPI in 1963 was 30.9. CPI in 2019 was 256.6. How much great-grandpa's earnings are in current dollars? You use the formula. Amount in today, 2019 dollars, is equal to 310, which was the amount in 1963, multiplied by the price index today, which is 256.6, divided by price index in 1963, which is 30.9. And so that amount, $310 in 1963, is equivalent to 2,574.3 today. Active Learning 4, comparing tuition increases. Tuition and fees at United States colleges and universities. Private nonprofit four-year college was $9,340 in 1990 and $35,813 in 2018. Public 4 years would $1,918 in 1990, $10,230 in 2018. Public 2-year colleges, 906 in 1990, 3,660 in 2018. The CPI in 1990 was 130.7 and 251.1 in 2018. Question. Number A, express the 1990 tuition figures in 2018 dollars. Then compute the percentage increase in real terms for all three types. And number B, which type experienced the largest increase in real tuition cost? So here are the answers. That 9,000 private non-profit four-year colleges, which was 9,340 in 1990. This 9,340 is equivalent. It's equivalent in today's dollars, or at least 2018, is 17,944. Now you can compare these two amounts and find the percentage change. So in real terms, private college education has gone up 99.7%. Public 4 years, 1,980 in 1990, is equivalent to 3,665 today. And you compare the two by finding percentage change. That means public 4-year colleges have gone up by 179.1%. Public 2-year colleges was $906 in 1990, which in today's dollars was 1,740. When you find the percentage change, you find that public 2-year colleges have increased by 110.3%. Education has gotten considerably expensive. Indexation. Indexation, a dollar amount is indexed for inflation. If it is automatically corrected for inflation by law in a contract, indexation. The increase in CPI automatically determines the COLA in many multi-year labor contracts, indexation. Adjustments in Social Security payments and federal income tax brackets, indexation. Real and nominal interest rates. The nominal interest rate is the interest rate that is not corrected for inflation, the rate of growth in the dollar value of a deposit or debt. The real interest rate, which is corrected for inflation, is the rate of growth in the purchasing power of a deposit or debt. The real interest rate is equal to nominal interest rate minus inflation rate. That is the formula for calculating real interest rate. Example 3, real versus nominal interest rate. Amir received $1,000 end of year bonus at his job. He deposited the $1,000 in his savings account for 1 year. The nominal interest rate is 9%. During that year, inflation is 3.5%. At the end of the year, is Amir able to buy more or fewer goods with his money? How much? Well, real interest rate is nominal interest rate minus inflation rate. So nominal interest rate is 9%, inflation rate is 3.5%. So the real interest rate is 5.5%. In other words, the purchasing power of the $1,000 deposit has grown by 5.5%. Real and nominal interest rate, the US 1965 to 2019. As you can see, real and nominal sometimes move together, sometimes they move away from each other. Think, pair, and share. Your grandfather quit smoking cigarettes in 1995. When you ask him why he quit, you get a surprising answer. Instead of reciting the health benefits of quitting smoking, he says, I quit because it was just getting too expensive. I started smoking in 1965 in Vietnam, and cigarettes were only 45 cents a pack. The last pack I bought was $2, and I just couldn't justify spending more than 4 times as much on cigarettes as I used to. Think about that. Number A, in 1965, the CPI was 31.5. In 1995, the CPI was 152.4. While it is commendable that your grandpa quit smoking, what is wrong with his explanation? Number B, what is the equivalent cost of a 1965 pack of cigarettes measured in 1995 prices? Number C, what is the equivalent cost of a 1995 pack of cigarettes measured in 1965 prices? Number D, do both methods give you the same conclusion? Think about that. Chapter in a nutshell. The Consumer Price Index, CPI, shows the cost of a basket of goods and services relative to the cost of the same basket in the base year, used to measure the overall level of prices in the economy. The percentage change in the CPI measures the inflation rate. The CPI overstates true inflation. It does not take into account consumers' ability to substitute towards goods that become relatively cheaper over time. It does not take into account increases in the purchasing power of the dollar that result from the introduction of new goods. It is distorted by unmeasured changes in quality of goods and services. Like the CPI, the GDP deflator measures the overall level of prices in the economy. The two price indices usually move together. The GDP deflator differs from the CPI because it reflects the prices of goods and services produced domestically rather than of goods and services bought by consumers. While the CPI uses the fixed basket of goods, the group of goods and services reflected in the GDP deflator automatically changes over time as the composition of GDP changes. To compare a dollar figure from the past with the dollar figure today, the older figure should be inflated using a price index. Various laws and private contracts use price indices to correct for the effects of inflation. The tax laws, however, are only partially indexed for inflation. Correcting for inflation is especially important when looking at data on interest rates. The nominal interest rate is the rate at which the number of dollars in a savings account increases over time. The real interest rate is the rate at which the purchasing power of a savings account increases over time. It equals the nominal interest rate minus the rate of inflation.